They called it a warning, a declaration carved into history with a scream and a silence so absolute it echoed across the stars. 70,000 Americans, engineers, teachers, soldiers, mothers, and children, hung limp in a line that stretched from the steel towers of Terra Nova Colony to the edge of the orbiting broadcast drones. The Galactic Empire made sure every world saw it. They wanted humanity to understand its place. Captain Reese Keller watched the footage again. His knuckles bled from clenching too tightly around the rusted pipe he'd ripped from the wall. The room stank of engine oil and burning circuits, his squad's hidden outpost deep beneath the moons of Tau Ceti. The screen in front of him showed the same footage over and over. The Empire's smug admiral smiling as Earth's citizens twisted in a vacuum. Reese didn't blink. Couldn't. They wanted us to see it, said Sergeant Mia Rojas from behind him. Her voice was low, like she was trying not to shatter. Wanted us to feel small. Reese finally turned. His face, scarred from earlier campaigns, looked like stone cut from war. Then they're going to learn how loud small things can scream. The unit was all that remained of the 303rd Recon Marines, once 500 strong, now just 12. When the Empire's fleet bombarded Earth's outer colonies and seized diplomatic stations, the U.S. government had ordered a strategic retreat. But the Empire didn't want just territory. They wanted fear. So they took prisoners, Americans, and hanged them across 5 sectors during a unification broadcast. It was genocide dressed as justice. Reese moved to the central console and pulled up the encrypted communique they'd intercepted last week. It was brief, clipped in tone. Empire warships relocating to occupy the Arcadia fault line, a narrow passage critical to the remaining free trade routes. More importantly, the Arcadia fault line housed the communications array responsible for galactic civilian traffic. If the Empire controlled it, the truth of the hangings would disappear into their propaganda machine. They're erasing what they did, said Corporal Duncan, the unit's tech specialist. They know if people really see, if they feel it, it'll start fires. Too late, Reese said. The fire's already here. Every Marine in that bunker had lost someone. Rojas' younger brother had been on the education ship Veritas, now a drifting grave. Duncan's wife had been taken from the mining colony on Cestus Prime, hanged with the engineers. Reese had seen the face of his old commander among the condemned, the one who taught him never to surrender. "What's the plan, sir?" Private Shaw asked. He was the youngest, barely 20, his voice still unsure when not holding a rifle. He stood straighter now, even as his hands trembled. Reese didn't look at him directly. He stared through the metal wall, as if seeing the path ahead. "We hit their relay before they bury the truth. Then we make sure the galaxy remembers what justice means." Silence followed, heavy and electric. Then Rojas stepped forward, nodded once. "Semper Fi." The others echoed it. Not loud, not proud, but grounded. A whisper before a storm. In the outer dark, past Tau Ceti's black glass moon, an Empire surveillance outpost spun silently. Inside, Commander Voss of the Galactic High Guard reviewed the security logs. No anomalies, no movement, nothing but silence. And yet, his skin prickled. "Sir," his second-in-command said, "we've received a report. Possible resistance movements forming around ex-colonial sectors." Voss waved them off. "They're grieving. Grief doesn't start wars. It ends them." He didn't see the silent transport vessel breach the outer hull of Relay Satellite C-21 3 hours later. Didn't hear the muffled gunfire. Didn't know that Corporal Duncan had spliced into the broadcast net and uploaded the raw footage. The screams, the hangings, the faces unedited and unfiltered onto every civilian comm band in the quadrant. Didn't know that by morning, 17 outer colonies had cut ties with the Empire. Back in the bunker, the squad listened as the data confirmed the transmission had gone through. Reese allowed himself one breath. Just one. "This isn't over," he said. "They'll come now. Full force." "Let them," Rojas replied, checking her rifle's magazine. But Reese wasn't done. "We don't wait. We strike first. The world saw what they did. Now they need to see what we do." Duncan raised his head from the terminal. "There's a high-value logistics point on Praxis Station. Empire uses it to resupply long-range cruisers. Destroy it, and we cut a third of their fleet's range. Praxis is fortified, Rojas warned. We've hit worse, Reese said. We'll hit harder. As the squad began planning the strike, the last line of the intercepted communique played again on Duncan's screen. A message from an unknown source buried in the Empire's command net. One sentence. No context. The Americans will not forgive. Duncan stared at it. Sir, this message, it didn't come from Earth. Reese looked up. It came from somewhere inside the Empire. For the first time in days, something flickered behind Reese's battle-hardened eyes. Hope? No. Something colder. Resolve. They think we're broken, he said. They haven't seen us angry yet. Outside, in the dead silence of space, the com's satellite flickered. The truth now echoed louder than the executions, and justice had just begun to whisper its name. Snow gave way to silence, and silence gave way to war. The cruiser, wrapped in a shell of dampening plates and pulse-masking panels, cut through the void like a shadow no one could follow. At its core sat 12 soldiers who no longer called themselves by rank when helmets were on. There was no hierarchy in the dark, no glory, just a mission. Inside the tight compartment, breath misted in the freezing recycled air. Boots braced against the trembling steel floor as gravitational inertia pulled them closer to the edge of conflict. Crucible Station was nearly in range. An orbital monstrosity of alloy and plasma coils strung like muscle over bone, rotating slowly above Jupiter's moon Ganymede. It wasn't just a broadcast hub. It was the Empire's crown jewel of psychological warfare. Every public execution streamed from there. Every message of alien supremacy. Every humiliation Earth had suffered over the past year had originated behind its shimmering walls. Sergeant Vega wiped the condensation from his visor and looked over at Kim, who was reviewing the infiltration data again, lips moving silently. Kim didn't speak when the others did. He spoke when it mattered. That's why Monroe had picked him. That's why they were all here, each chosen not just for skill, but for their silence. Their ability to bury pain under focus. Atmospheric burn-in 30, Kim finally said. Captain Monroe, helmet sealed, turned toward the squad. No engagement unless necessary. We breach low. We ghost in. Objectives the broadcast chamber. Second spire, midcore. No prisoners. No distractions. We're not here to scare them. We're here to end them. Corporal Riker leaned back, adjusting the bipod on his rifle. His fingers moved with cold precision, counting each click. He had memorized the guard rotations on Crucible, knew the average breathing cycle of the armored Zarn sentries, knew the reverb range of suppressed shots in vacuum-welded corridors. He didn't speak now either. The cruiser shuddered as it entered Ganymede's thin magnetic field. The Empire's sensors pulsed, but their eyes were forward, not below. They didn't expect anyone to come from the ice. Underground, Crucible's lower modules were secured more by environmental hazard than firepower. The temperature outside hovered near minus 170 degrees Celsius. No species native to the Empire had evolved for that. No one thought Earthborn men would crawl up from beneath the surface like ghosts under snow. The ship broke through and released its drop capsule. 12 Marines cocooned in polymer shells that drilled into the crust like silent predators. No radar ping. No signature trace. Just a soft vibration through the metal bones of Crucible as something clawed its way up. Monroe's pod cracked open first, releasing a hiss of freezing air. He stepped out onto the ice shelf buried hundreds of meters beneath the station. Darkness swallowed everything except the faint blue glow of their visors. We good? Vega asked, already unspooling thermal charges. We're ghosts, Kim replied. Start the climb. They moved like a single organism, each man gripping the carbon anchors, scaling the inner support pylon that rose toward the underbelly of Crucible. It took 27 minutes to reach the lowest maintenance hatch, and another 6 to crack it open using an Empire-grade mimic bypass that Kim had stolen 2 years ago. Every move was quiet. Every sound was memorized. No second chances. Inside, the walls of Crucible breathed. Literally. Alien architecture was a blend of machine and organic latticework. Veins of luminescent coolant pulsed through the walls, and curved chambers echoed with a rhythmic thrum, like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. The Empire had mastered intimidation by design. The Marines slipped through it like antibodies hunting a virus. First contact came 5 minutes in. 2 sentries, 8 feet tall, skin like obsidian, moving in perfect unison. They didn't get the chance to signal. Riker dropped both with back-to-back shots to their neural clusters. The bodies fell without a sound. No alarms. Vega dragged them into a shadow alcove while Monroe checked the corner. They advanced deeper into the internal structure, moving toward the second spire. Every twist of the corridor narrowed their margin for error. Alien chatter crackled through the comms intercept. Most of it was routine. Movement reports, thermal vent cycles. Nothing that hinted they had been noticed. But something shifted. Halfway through a circular junction chamber, the walls pulsed brighter. Kim stiffened. Heartbeats increased. Structural bayonet just elevated oxygen density. They're waking something up. Monroe raised his hand. The squad froze. Seconds passed. A low growl rippled through the chamber like distant thunder. A pressure wave rolled overhead. No sound alarms. No flashing lights. Just a shift in the station's living rhythm. Something ancient, slow, and dangerous. Change of plan, Monroe said. Split. Vega blinked. Sir, you and Riker take the upper loop. Handle the backup generator. Kim and I cut through mid-core and hit the primary feed. The rest goes silent, perimeter hold. If they hit us, give us 5 minutes before extraction breach. Riker nodded. 5 minutes and not a breath more. Monroe locked eyes with him. If we're not out, then it's over, Riker finished. Understood. They split without hesitation. No protests. No debate. The kind of trust forged in fire and funerals. As Monroe and Kim moved through the narrowing conduits, the walls began to change. Less machine, more flesh. Pulsing nodes, scentless vapors, twitching panels. Crucible wasn't just broadcasting death. It was alive. They built it on something old, Kim muttered. Xenotech, maybe pre-imperial. I don't like this. Focus on the feed, Monroe replied. They reached the central conduit, a long, elevated corridor that ended in a massive dome of shimmering latticework. Inside the broadcast core, and the thing that guarded it. At first, Monroe thought it was a statue, an obsidian sentinel fused to the wall. Then it moved. It had no eyes, no limbs, just layers of armor folded into itself, and a single pulsing core of red light in its center. It unfolded slowly, soundlessly, drifting forward like a nightmare, given gravity. EMP now, Monroe ordered. Kim hurled the charge. The burst lit the chamber in pale white, and the creature spasmed, shrieked, not in sound but in vibration. The lights dimmed. The node flared. Systems blinked erratically. Monroe charged, rifle roaring, every round hammering into the center of the creature's core. Kim moved to the broadcast console, fingers flying across the alien interface, bypassing layers of encrypted code. The Sentinel collapsed in a final pulse of red light. Monroe approached the console, breath ragged. Status. Kim looked up. 1 minute. Then it's hours. Outside, Riker's voice crackled through comms. Upper generator fried. Reboot loop triggered. You have 5 minutes before backup comes online. Kim didn't stop typing. We'll be done in 3. Then the chamber shuddered. A low, mechanical scream filled the dome. Dozens of red lights flickered into existence down the hall behind them. They know, Monroe said. Kim didn't flinch. Let them. The lights turned red, not as a warning, but as a declaration. Crucible Station, awakened from its slumber, began to scream, not in audible tones, but in gravitational pulses that trembled through every support beam. The architecture itself shivered with life, as if the act of intrusion had offended its ancient memory. Above the chamber, sirens carved from glass vibrated into light, and the scent of ionized air thickened like ozone before a storm. Captain Monroe took a knee beside the ruined sentinel, rifle raised, eyes sweeping the corridor that now boiled with movement. Alien shapes surged through the smoke. Limbs too long, armor that bent and shimmered like oil under pressure. Not soldiers, not drones, response units. Killers bred for containment and silence. Kim didn't lift his head from the console. His fingers blurred across alien glyphs, translating, bypassing, overriding. He whispered to himself, as if reciting a prayer. 2 more walls. 40% decrypt. Systems bleeding. Almost there. Monroe opened fire. Each shot a precise answer to the chaos rushing toward them. The rifle bucked, glowing hot as rounds punctured armor and shattered the silence. 2 hostiles collapsed. A third fell mid-leap, twitching in the air before crashing down in pieces. They'll keep coming, Monroe said. They always do, Kim replied, eyes fixed. Behind them, the broadcast core began to pulse erratically, its shimmering wall of energy destabilizing with each override. A storm of corrupted data cascaded through the feed. Somewhere deep in the Empire's networks, glitches flickered into public view. A momentary loss of control, a wound in their narrative. On the far side of the chamber, a heavy door hissed open. Sergeant Vega charged through with Riker and the remaining fire team in tow. Their armor bore burns, gashes, and blood, none of it their own. Riker held his rifle like it was part of his body, eyes locked on Monroe. "We brought the party," Vega said. "We're not staying for cake," Monroe shot back. "Form a circle." The Marines fell into position without hesitation. No shouts, no panic, just motion refined into efficiency. Crossfire laced the chamber. Each movement coordinated, each shot measured. Enemies fell in 2s and 3s, but still they came. The Empire had underestimated humanity once. Now it overcompensated with volume. But numbers meant little in a kill box. Kim's voice cut through the gunfire. Final override now. The broadcast core flared with unstable light. Energy cascaded through the alien lattice, seizing control of the station's main relay. A flicker rippled through every screen across the Empire. Execution footage stuttered, glitched, and then shifted. It began with silence. Then, slowly, a new image appeared. The execution grid, still, lifeless, frozen in horror. A sea of 70,000 bodies. The screen held that image longer than most could bear. It forced the galaxy to look, to feel, to remember. Then the view widened. A single line of text scrolled beneath it in 47 languages. Earth remembers. And then came the fire. Vega stepped forward, setting the charges around the broadcast core. "We broadcasting this next part. We are now," Kim said. "Station-wide. Unfiltered." Monroe gave a single nod. "Then make it count." The team moved to the perimeter, locking down all corridors. Riker took up high ground, his rifle scope linked to motion sensors now blinking red. They're converging. At least 3 squads, 2 mech frames. Vega primed the charges. "We've got 30 seconds of glory left." Kim, still near the console, turned to Monroe. "You want a final word?" Monroe stared into the lens, now tracking him. No medals, no rank, no flag behind him, just blood, smoke, and the faint echo of war drums. He lifted his helmet off, slowly. The face beneath wasn't clean or heroic. It was tired, weathered, human. He looked straight into the eye of the Empire. "You showed the galaxy what fear looks like," he said. "Now we show them what justice sounds like." And then he stepped back. The charges detonated in perfect sequence. No fire, no explosion, just light. A silent burst of white that turned the entire core into a sun. The energy screamed through the data streams, consuming the broadcast chamber in a blinding surge. It tore through Crucible's neural matrix, unraveling decades of control in seconds. The Empire's voice died. Screens across the galaxy blinked into silence. At that same instant, the kill teams breached the chamber. The Marines didn't wait. The last firefight was brutal, wordless. Plasma burned the air, tracer rounds danced across the lattice walls. Riker dropped 3 before the mech cannon found him. He didn't scream. He just kept shooting until the armor exploded. Kim was hit shielding the console. Monroe pulled him back, hand pressed to the wound, eyes filled with fury but no fear. Vega held the rear, teeth bared, laughter in his throat. They finally brought enough bodies. He held the detonator in his palm. Monroe looked at him. "Are we clear?" Kim coughed, blood in his throat. "Long enough." Vega thumbed the trigger. The second wave of charges tore through Crucible's central nervous system. The power grid folded inward, sending a chain reaction through the station's biological core. Walls convulsed. Lights burst. A soundless howl filled the corridors as the Empire's crown jewel collapsed from within. The Marines ran. Corridors twisted behind them, collapsing as organic supports failed. Sparks rained from above. Flame tore through ducts. Automated systems screamed warnings in forgotten tongues. They reached the extraction shaft. The autopod was already docked, barely intact, hull scorched from internal breaches. Monroe shoved Kim inside. Vega followed, dragging a wounded Marine whose name had been forgotten by the Empire, but never by Earth. As the pod sealed, Monroe looked back. Crucible Station, so proud, so feared, was breaking apart. The spires crumbled, plasma vents rupturing like arteries. A station that had broadcast suffering now radiated its own. The pod launched, hurtling toward orbit. Inside, silence reclaimed them. No cheers, no speeches, just the sound of breath and the knowledge that the ghosts had screamed loud enough for the galaxy to hear. And Earth would never forget it. The battlefield still burned. Ashes drifted like snow across the broken plains of Telvaris Prime. Smoke curled from alien structures once thought impenetrable, now reduced to blackened skeletons. The cries of the dying, alien and human, had faded into silence. But the ghosts lingered. Captain Rivas stood in the heart of it all. His armor was scorched, dented, and half-drenched in blood not his own. His pulse was steady now. The rage had passed. The mission was complete. 70,000 souls. Each one of them had screamed before they died. Hanged by the Empire on a broadcast, looped across the stars. Their deaths weren't meant to kill. They were meant to humiliate, to break the human spirit. But the Empire had never understood Earth's history. You don't break humans with cruelty. You forge them. Sergeant Hale approached, limping, one arm clutched to his side, his face dark with soot and resolve. "They're done, sir," he said quietly. "Command confirms orbital withdrawal. The fleet's pulling out. We hold the capital now." Rivas nodded. He didn't smile. There was no triumph in justice delivered too late. He scanned the battlefield one last time. Wrecked gunships lay embedded in collapsed stone. Bodies, alien commandants, elite war beasts, even the Emperor's personal guard, littered the field. They'd underestimated Earth one final time. The Marines hadn't come for conquest. They came for remembrance. "You got the prisoner?" Rivas asked. "Yeah," Hale said. "General Varkin. He surrendered after we broke the line. He's in transit to the tribunal." "Public, streamed across all Empire systems," Hale replied. "Just like they did to us." Rivas nodded again. A quiet wind blew over the ruins. Somewhere in the rubble, a child's necklace clinked against steel. Someone must have carried it with them. One of the hostages, maybe. One of the ones who didn't make it. He crouched, picked it up, and closed it in his hand. There had been no rescue mission. By the time Earth's War Council had voted, by the time logistics aligned, the children, the elders, the innocents, all 70,000, were already gone. It didn't get a fight back, but the Marines did. "We lost 600, Hale muttered. "We knew the cost," Rivas replied. "And they'll never forget the price they paid." High above them, the once impenetrable citadel of the Empire shone with fire. Earth's flag now waved from its shattered balcony, tattered but standing. The signal beacons blinked red, distress, surrender, and acknowledgement. The galaxy had seen the broadcast. They had cheered or wept or recoiled. But now they would remember this. Earth did not beg for peace. Earth came for reckoning. A low buzz hummed in Rivas' ear, Fleet Command patching through. He tapped the comms. "Captain Rivas," the voice came. "Intel confirms last surviving Empire fleet group has jumped into outer drift. They're retreating." "Let them run," Rivas replied. "They've already lost." He disconnected. Hale shifted his weight, gazing toward the charred hills. "Think they'll try again?" he asked. "No," Rivas said. "They'll spend centuries rebuilding. And even then, their children will grow up hearing about what happened here. About what happens when you mess with Earth." Silence. Then Hale chuckled, dry, tired. "Hell of a war," he said. "It wasn't a war," Rivas answered. "It was a message." He handed Hale the necklace. "Bury that for me. Somewhere quiet." Hale nodded and walked off. Rivas remained alone, staring at the sky. A single drop of rain hit his helmet, water condensing from the still-burning atmosphere. The planet itself cried. Above, the orbital camera drones hovered, still streaming. Billions of beings across hundreds of systems were watching. Rivas turned to face them. He said nothing. Just a man in burnt armor, surrounded by ruins, breathing the smoke of justice. He raised one hand in a silent salute, to the dead, to the lost, to the unbroken. That was all. He didn't need to say words. The galaxy had already heard enough. Weeks passed. Trials were held in galactic courts. The captured leaders of the Empire, those who had ordered the executions, were brought forward in chains. Some wept. Some begged. Some claimed they were just following orders. But the footage had already damned them. The executions, the laughter, the taunts. And now, in the same format, the same stage, Earth gave them their judgment. A broadcast streamed not for fear, not for cruelty, but for memory. In a quiet corner of Earth, a field of white flags bloomed. Each one marked a name. Not just the 70,000, but also the Marines who didn't come home, and the allies who stood with them. Rivas stood among the markers, dressed not in armor, but in plain black. Hale beside him. Neither man spoke. There were still wounds that wouldn't heal, scars that wouldn't fade. But they stood, because that's what humans do. Behind them, the world was beginning to move again. Reconstruction, new alliances, former enemies, now extending cautious hands. No one would say it openly, but all of them knew. Earth had changed the galactic balance, not by force of numbers or superior weapons, but through will, through sacrifice, through rage born of loss. In the days that followed, a new fleet was built, not for war, but for remembrance. The USS Honor, a massive memorial ship, carried the names of the 70,000 engraved into its hull. It would drift through the stars, a permanent reminder, never again. And in the silence of space, somewhere between forgotten worlds and smoldering empires, Captain Rivas sat alone in his quarters, listening to an old Earth song. One lyric echoed louder than the rest. "This is our reply.